The space station floated in the dark between Earth and Mars. Its metal walls were shiny and reflected the faraway sun. Inside the station, people worked at their jobs. They did not know that something was watching them from the empty space. Outside, Dr. Lisa Park looked at her computer screen again. She had been checking the same numbers for 3 days now. Something strange was out there. Her machines could see it, but her eyes could not. "I still see nothing," said Commander Rick. Stone. He stood by the big window looking out into space. "But those readings are real. Something made them." Lisa nodded. She pushed her brown hair back from her face. "The energy patterns are not natural. Someone or something is using technology out there." The other crew members went about their work. They fixed machines, ran tests, and sent messages back to Earth. The station was home to 50 people. They were scientists, engineers, and soldiers. All of them were smart and good at their jobs. None of them knew they were being studied. In the cold darkness of space, something moved. It had no solid body like humans do. Instead, it was made of light and energy. Its name was Zixthara. It belonged to a race called the Velinari. For hundreds of years, the Velinari had traveled between the stars. They had met many different kinds of life. The Velinari had a special gift. They could read minds. They could look into any thinking creature's head and see what it was thinking. This made them very powerful. They could understand any new race. They met in just a few minutes. Zixthara had been sent to study these new creatures called humans. The Velinari Council wanted to know if humans were dangerous. If they were not, the Council would leave them alone. If they were dangerous, the Council would do something about it. The alien moved closer to the human station. It passed through the metal walls like they were not there. No human machine could see it. No human eye could spot it. Zixthara was invisible to them. The alien floated in the main hallway of the station. Humans walked past it every few minutes. They carried tools and talked to each other. They seemed busy but not worried. Zixthara watched them with interest. These humans looked different from each other. Some were tall, some were short. Some had dark skin, some had light skin. Their hair was different colors. But they all walked on 2 legs and had 2 arms. They seemed to work together well. The alien decided to start with the closest human. A young man named Alex Chun was working on a machine that made air for the station. He had black hair and wore a blue work suit. He was checking tubes and wires. Zixthara reached out with its mind. It touched Alex's thoughts gently. The human did not feel it. The alien began to read his mind. Alex was thinking about his work. He was making sure the air system worked right. He was careful and followed the rules. He checked each part twice. He wrote down what he found. His thoughts were neat and organized. The alien also saw Alex's feelings. The young man missed his family on Earth. He thought about his parents and his sister. He wondered what they were doing right now. But he also felt proud of his work on the station. He was helping people live in space. Zixthara pulled its mind back. This was very easy. The human's thoughts were simple to read. They moved in straight lines from one idea to the next. The alien felt pleased. These humans seemed normal. The alien moved to the next person. Dr. Park was still looking at her computer screen. She was trying to figure out what was causing the strange readings. Her mind was full of science and math. Zixthara read her thoughts. Dr. Park was very smart. She knew a lot about space and energy. She was making guesses about what might be out there. But her guesses were all wrong. She thought it might be a broken satellite or a piece of space rock. The alien found her mind easy to read, too. She thought like a scientist. She looked at facts and made careful conclusions. She did not jump to wild ideas. She was logical and Methodical Commander Stone was the next person the alien studied. He was the leader of the station. His mind was different from the others. It was very organized. He thought about keeping people safe. He made plans for different situations. He was ready to protect his crew. The alien read his military training. Commander Stone had been a soldier before he came to space. He knew how to fight and how to lead. But he also cared about the people under his command. He wanted everyone to go home safely. Zixthara was starting to understand humans. They were not very different from other races the Velinari had met. They were smart enough to travel in space. They worked together well. They had feelings and cared about each other. But they were not special or dangerous. The alien spent the next few hours reading more minds. It studied an engineer named Bobby Kim. His thoughts were all about machines and how to fix them. It read the mind of a biologist named Susan White. She thought about plants and animals and how life worked. Every human mind was easy to read. They all thought in similar ways. They had logical thoughts that moved from one idea to the next. They had normal feelings like happiness, sadness, and worry. They were predictable. The alien began to prepare its report for the Velinari Council. These humans were not a threat. They were just another young race learning to travel in space. They could be watched, but did not need to be controlled or stopped. But then something strange happened. The alien felt a different kind of mind on the station. This mind was not like the others. It was wild and chaotic. It jumped from thought to a thought like a bouncing ball. It was full of energy and impossible to follow. Zixthara had never felt anything like it. In all its years of reading minds, it had never met a consciousness that worked this way. The alien felt curious and worried at the same time. What kind of human could think in such a strange way? The alien began to move toward this unusual mind. It wanted to understand what made this human different. It had no idea that it was about to meet something that would change everything. It thought it knew about the human race. In a room full of machines and glowing screens, a young man named Jake Martinez was working on a complex problem. His mind was unlike any other on the station. And when the alien tried to read his thoughts, nothing would ever be the same again. Zixthara felt confident as it moved through the space station. Reading human minds was turning out to be very easy. Much easier than some other alien races the Velinari had met before. The alien decided to study more humans before making its final report. The alien found Dr. Park still working at her computer. She was trying to solve the mystery of the energy readings. Zixthara watched her work and listened to her thoughts. The doctor was very methodical. She looked at each piece of data carefully. She wrote down notes. She made charts and graphs. Dr. Park's mind worked like a good machine. First, she would look at the facts. Then she would think of possible explanations. After that, she would test her ideas against what she knew about science. If an idea did not fit, she would throw it away and try another one. The alien found this very easy to follow. The doctor's thoughts moved in a straight line from beginning to end. There were no surprises or sudden changes. Even when she had a new idea, it came from the facts she had been studying. Everything made sense. Zixthara moved on to study other crew members. It found engineer Tony Martinez working on the station's power systems. His mind was focused on electricity and circuits. He thought about voltage and current flow. He worried about backup systems and safety protocols. Tony's thoughts were neat and organized. He had learned his job well. When he saw a problem, he followed a set of steps to fix it. First, he would identify what was wrong. Then he would find the right tools. After that, he would make the repair carefully and test it to make sure it worked. The alien could easily predict what Tony would think next. If the main power line had a problem, Tony would think about the backup power line. If a circuit was overloaded, he would think about adding more circuits. His mind worked like a textbook. Next, the alien studied communications officer Gary Walsh. Gary was sending messages back to Earth and receiving new orders. His mind was full of radio frequencies and signal strengths. He thought about how to make messages clearer and how to reach farther into space. Gary's thoughts followed the same pattern as the others. He was logical and careful. He double-checked his work. He followed procedures that he had memorized. When something went wrong, he had a list of things to try. He worked through the list until he found the solution. The alien was beginning to see a pattern in all human minds. They were similar to each other in important ways. They all used logic to solve problems. They all followed step-by-step procedures. They all learned from experience and applied what they learned to new situations. Zixthara studied the station's security chief, a woman named Corinne Davis. Her mind was different from the scientists and engineers, but it was still easy to read. She thought about protecting the station and its crew. She made plans for different kinds of danger. She practiced what to do in emergencies. Corinne's military training showed in her thoughts. She was always alert and ready for trouble, but her mind was still organized and logical. She thought about threats in order of how likely they were to happen. She prepared for the most dangerous possibilities. First, the alien rid the mind of Medical Officer Dr. James Wilson. He was checking on the health of the crew. His thoughts were about medicine and healing. He worried about diseases that could spread in the closed environment of the space station. He made sure everyone was eating right and getting enough exercise. Dr. Wilson's mind worked like the others. He saw symptoms and thought about what might cause them. He considered different treatments and chose the best one. He kept careful records of everything he did. His thoughts were calm and systematic. Biologist Rachel Green was studying samples of space dust that the station had collected. Her mind was full of scientific curiosity. She wondered about life on other planets. She looked for signs of organic molecules in the dust particles. She dreamed of discovering new forms of life, but even Rachel's dreams were logical. She based her hopes on scientific facts. She knew what kinds of molecules life needed. She understood how life might develop in different environments. Her imagination was controlled by her scientific training. The alien began to feel very sure about its understanding of humans. They were all basically the same kind of thinker. They used reason and logic. They learned from experience. They worked together to solve problems. They were curious about the universe, but not in a dangerous way. Zixthara studied a few more crew members to be completely sure. There was computer specialist Lisa Wang, whose mind was full of code and programming logic. Her thoughts moved through decision trees and logical branches, just like the computer programs she wrote. There was Maintenance Chief Robert Brown, who thought about fixing things and keeping the station running smoothly. His mind was practical and focused on immediate problems. He thought about tools and spare parts and work schedules. There was psychologist Dr. Sarah Miller, who studied the mental health of the crew. Her mind was concerned with human emotions and behavior. But even she thought about feelings in a scientific way. She had theories about how minds worked and used them to help people with problems. Every human mind the alien studied was the same in important ways. They were all rational and predictable. They all followed patterns that made sense. They were all easy to understand and easy to control if necessary. The alien felt pleased with its work. It had studied 15 different humans and found them all to be similar. They were intelligent enough to be interesting, but not so different that they would be difficult to deal with. The Velinari Council would be satisfied with this report. Humans were just another spacefaring race. They were curious and clever, but they were not unique or special. They thought in the same basic ways as dozens of other alien species the Velinari had encountered. Their minds were open books that could be read easily. Zixthara began to compose its final report in its mind. Humans are a typical developing species, it would say. They show standard intelligence patterns and emotional responses. They pose no unusual challenges to veterinary interests. Recommend classification as non-threatening and suitable for standard contact protocols. But then, just as the alien was about to leave the station, it felt something that made it stop. There was another human mind somewhere on the station. But this mind was different from all the others. It was not calm and logical. It was not following neat patterns of thought. This mind was chaos. It was jumping from idea to idea so fast that the alien could barely keep up. It was thinking about dozens of different things at the same time. It was creative and wild and completely unpredictable. Zixthara had never encountered anything like it. The alien felt confused and curious at the same time. What kind of human could think in such a strange way? Was this human sick or damaged? Or was it something else entirely? The alien needed to investigate. It could not make its final report until it understood this unusual mind. Zixthara began to move toward the source of the chaotic thoughts. It had no idea that it was about to discover something that would change everything it thought it knew about humans. In Engineering Bay 7, Jake Martinez was working on 3 different projects at once. His mind was racing with ideas and possibilities. He was about to give the alien the biggest surprise of its very long life. Jake Martinez sat in the middle of Engineering Bay 7, surrounded by floating computer screens and blinking lights. He had 6 different projects spread out around him. His hands moved quickly from one keyboard to another. His eyes darted between screens showing different kinds of information. To anyone watching, Jake looked very busy, but also very disorganized. Tools were scattered everywhere. Half-finished diagrams floated in the air around him. Coffee cups sat on various surfaces, some empty, some full, some forgotten completely. But Jake knew exactly where everything was. His mind kept track of all his projects at once. He was working on improving the station's power system, designing a better water recycler, fixing a broken communication antenna, updating the computer security, planning a new exercise room, and thinking about how to grow better food in space. That most people would find this impossible. The human brain usually works best when it focuses on one thing at a time. But Jake's brain was different. He had something called ADHD, which made his mind work in a special way. Jake had always been different from other people. In school, teachers said he could not pay attention. They said he was too restless and talked too much. They said he needed to focus better and stop getting distracted. But Jake's mind was not broken. It was just different. Instead of thinking about one thing at a time, he thought about many things at once. Instead of following one idea from start to finish, he jumped between ideas and found connections that other people missed. This made Jake very good at his job as an engineer. He could see problems that others missed. He could find solutions that came from combining different areas of knowledge. He could work on boring tasks by switching to more interesting ones when he got restless. Right now, Jake was in what he called his flow state. His mind was moving very fast, jumping from project to project, making connections and solving problems. He felt happy and energized. This was when he did his best work. Zixthara approached Engineering Bay 7 slowly. The alien could sense the unusual mind inside, but it was hard to understand what it was sensing. The thoughts coming from this human were unlike anything the alien had ever encountered. The alien phased through the wall and entered the engineering bay. It saw Jake working at his multiple screens, his fingers dancing across keyboards, his head turning quickly from one display to another. The human looked busy but not stressed. He seemed to be enjoying himself. Zixthara decided to read this human's thoughts the same way it had read all the others. The alien reached out with its mind and tried to make contact with Jake's consciousness. The moment the connection formed, Zixthara felt like it had been hit by lightning. Jake's mind was not the calm river of thought that the alien expected. It was like trying to drink from a fire hose. Thoughts and ideas rushed past so quickly that the alien could barely catch them. The human was thinking about power systems and food production, and exercise equipment and communication protocols all at the same time. But it was worse than that. Each thought led to 3 other thoughts, which led to 9 more thoughts, which led to 27 more thoughts. Jake's mind was like a tree that kept growing new branches every second. The alien tried to follow one branch of thought, but before it could understand where it was going, Jake's attention had jumped to a completely different branch. Zixthara tried to focus on just one of Jake's projects. The human was working on improving the station's power distribution system. This should have been a straightforward engineering problem with a logical solution, but Jake was not approaching it in a logical way. He was thinking about the power system, but he was also thinking about how electrical current was like water flowing through pipes, which reminded him of the plumbing in his childhood home, which made him think about his brother, who was a plumber, which made him remember a joke his brother told him about aliens, which made him wonder what aliens would think of human plumbing, which gave him an idea about using fluid dynamics principles to improve power flow. All of these thoughts happened in about 10 seconds. The alien tried to keep up, but felt completely lost. How could one mind hold so many different ideas at the same time? How could Jake keep track of all these mental threads without getting confused? But somehow, Jake was not confused at all. He was using his scattered thoughts to solve problems in creative ways. The idea about fluid dynamics actually worked. Jake quickly designed a new power routing system based on how water flows around obstacles. It was brilliant and completely unexpected. Zixthara tried a different approach. Maybe if the alien focused on Jake's emotions instead of his thoughts, it could understand this human better. But Jake's emotions were just as chaotic as his thoughts. Human felt excited about his work, but he also felt frustrated because he had so many ideas that he could not explore them all. He felt happy about solving problems, but he also felt restless because sitting still was difficult for him. He felt confident in his abilities, but he also felt worried that other people thought he was strange or lazy. The alien had never encountered such complex and contradictory emotions. Most beings felt one main emotion at a time, with perhaps 1 or 2 smaller emotions in the background. Jake seemed to feel 6 different emotions at once, and they were all equally strong. Even worse. For the alien, Jake's emotions kept changing. He would feel excited for 2 minutes, then frustrated for 30 seconds, then curious for 5 minutes, then happy for 1 minute, then worried for 10 seconds. The emotional landscape of his mind shifted constantly like weather patterns on a stormy planet. Zixthara began to feel something it had never felt before: confusion. The alien species prided themselves on being able to understand any form of consciousness they encountered. They had studied thousands of different alien races over many centuries. They had never met a mind they could not read and understand. But Jake Martinez was different. His mind did not follow any of the patterns that the alien knew. It was not logical like the other humans. It was not emotional like some alien species. It was not instinctive like primitive beings. It was something completely new. The alien tried to impose some kind of order on Jake's thoughts. It tried to slow them down or organize them into categories. But every time Zixthara tried to control Jake's mental processes, they became even more chaotic. It was like trying to catch smoke with your hands. Jake suddenly stopped what he was doing and looked around the room. He said out loud, "I have the weirdest feeling that someone is watching me." The alien froze. Could this human somehow sense its presence? That should have been impossible. Humans did not have telepathic abilities. They should not be able to detect a Velinari entity. But Jake's unusual mind was picking up on the alien's mental probing. His ADHD brain was sensitive to changes in his environment. He could sense when something was different, even if he could not explain what it was. Must be my imagination, Jake said to himself. He went back to his work, but part of his attention was now focused on the strange feeling he had. His mind added this new mystery to all the other thoughts swirling around in his head. Zixthara realized he was in trouble. This human was not only impossible to read clearly, he was also somehow aware that his mind was being read. The alien had never encountered anything like this before. For the first time in its long life, Zixthara began to doubt its abilities. Maybe humans were not the simple, predictable species the alien had thought they were. Maybe Jake Martinez represented something new and dangerous that the Velinari had never seen before. The alien decided it needed to study this unusual human more carefully. It had to understand how Jake's mind worked before it could report back to the Velinari Council. But as Zixthara settled in to watch Jake more closely, it had no idea that it was about to experience something that would shake its understanding of consciousness to its very core. Zixthara decided to watch Jake Martinez for a longer time. The alien needed to understand how this strange human mind worked. It settled into a corner of the engineering bay and observed Jake carefully. For the next hour, the alien watched in growing amazement. Jake moved from project to project like a bee visiting flowers. He would work on the power system for 10 minutes, then suddenly switch to the water recycler for 5 minutes, then jump to the communication antenna for 15 minutes, then back to the power system. But Jake was not just randomly jumping around. Each time he switched projects, he brought new ideas from his previous work. When he went from the power system to the water recycler, he applied electrical principles to fluid management. When he moved from the communication antenna to the computer security, he used signal processing concepts to improve data protection. The alien realized that Jake was not scattered and unfocused like it had first thought. Instead, he was making connections between different areas of knowledge that other people would never see. His mind was like a web that connected everything to everything else. Now Jake suddenly stopped working and stared at one of his screens. His mind had locked onto a particularly difficult problem with the station's defense systems. The alien watched as something remarkable happened to Jake's thoughts. All of the chaos and jumping around suddenly stopped. Jake's mind became laser-focused on the defense system problem. For the next 4 hours, he thought about nothing else. His attention became so intense that he forgot to eat lunch. He forgot to drink water. He forgot that other people existed. Zixthara had never seen anything like this. One moment Jake's mind was scattered in a dozen directions, and the next moment it was more focused than any human the alien had ever studied. This level of concentration was incredible, even frightening. During these 4 hours of intense focus, Jake solved problems that had puzzled the station's engineers for weeks. He redesigned the entire defense grid, making it twice as effective while using half as much power. He found flaws in the current system that no one else had noticed. He created backup systems for the backup systems. Then, just as suddenly as it had started, Jake's hyperfocus ended. His mind scattered again, jumping from thought to thought like a butterfly in a garden. He looked around the room as if he was waking up from a dream. "Oh, wow," Jake said to himself. "I've been working for 4 hours straight. I should probably eat something." The alien was deeply disturbed by what it had witnessed. Jake's mind could switch between two completely different modes of operation. Sometimes it was chaotic and creative, jumping between ideas at lightning speed. Sometimes it was incredibly focused, able to solve complex problems that stumped other experts. Zixthara tried different approaches to understand Jake's consciousness. It tried to map his thought patterns, but they kept changing. It tried to predict what he would think about next, but Jake's mind was completely unpredictable. It tried to influence his thoughts, but its telepathic suggestions just got lost in the chaos. The alien began to realize that its telepathic abilities were not just ineffective against Jake's mind, they were actually making things worse. Every time Zixthara tried to impose order on Jake's thoughts, they became more chaotic. Every time it tried to control his attention, his mind scattered further. It was like trying to organize a tornado. The more the alien pushed, the more resistance it met. Jake's ADHD brain seemed to instinctively fight against any attempt to control it from the outside. Over the next day, the alien watched Jake work on 7 different projects. It saw him solve problems that should have taken teams of engineers weeks to figure out. It watched him make creative leaps that seemed to come from nowhere, but somehow always worked. Jake designed a new air filtration system by combining ideas from biology, chemistry, and mechanical engineering. He improved the station's food production by applying principles from ecology and computer science. He created a better waste management system by thinking about how nature recycles materials. But the alien also saw Jake struggle with things that other humans found easy. He had trouble sitting through long meetings because his mind wanted to wander. He forgot to do routine maintenance tasks because they were boring to him. He sometimes started projects and then abandoned them. When something more interesting caught his attention, Zixthara began to understand that Jake's unusual mind was both a great strength and a significant challenge. His ADHD made him incredibly creative and able to see solutions that others missed. But it also made him restless and easily distracted by routine tasks. The alien realized that humans were much more complicated than it had first thought. The other crew members had seemed simple and predictable, but now Zixthara wondered if it had missed important details about them too. Maybe human minds were more diverse than the alien had realized. But Jake's mind was something completely new. The alien had studied thousands of different species across the galaxy, and it had never encountered a consciousness that worked like his. Most beings thought in linear patterns, following logical steps from beginning to end. Jake's mind was like a web of interconnected thoughts that could focus intensely on one area, or spread out to cover many areas at once. The alien tried to understand the biological basis for Jake's unusual thinking. It studied his brain activity with its telepathic senses and found patterns unlike anything it had seen before. Jake's brain used different pathways than other humans. It processed information in parallel streams instead of sequential steps. Zixthara began to realize that Jake represented something that could be very dangerous to the Velinari. The alien species had dominated other races by reading their minds and predicting their behavior. But Jake's mind was essentially unreadable and completely unpredictable. If all humans had minds like Jake's, the Velinari would be in serious trouble. Their entire approach to dealing with other species was based on their telepathic abilities. Against minds like Jake's, those abilities were not just useless, they were counterproductive. But the alien told itself that Jake must be unusual among humans. After all, the other crew members had normal, readable minds. Jake was probably just one strange individual in a species of otherwise predictable beings. However, as Zixthara continued to study Jake, it began to notice other things. Jake mentioned having a sister who was just like him in terms of how her mind worked. He talked about friends back on Earth who shared his way of thinking. He spoke about support groups for people with AD. The alien realized with growing alarm that Jake was not unique. There were other humans with minds like his. Maybe not many, but some. And if even a small percentage of humans had unreadable, unpredictable minds, it could cause serious problems for the Velinari. Zixthara decided it needed to report back to the Velinari Council immediately. This was too important to delay. But as the alien prepared to leave the space station, it felt something it had never experienced before: fear. The Velinari had always been the ones in control when meeting new species. They could read minds, predict behavior, and manipulate thoughts. They were always one step ahead of everyone else. But humans like Jake Martinez changed everything. His mind was like a wild storm that could not be predicted or controlled. And if there were more humans like him, the Velinari might have finally met their match. The alien began to transmit its urgent report back to the Velinari fleet, not knowing that its message would soon bring a dozen warships to the human space station. And when those ships arrived, Jake Martinez and his chaotic, brilliant, completely unpredictable mind would be humanity's only hope for survival. 3 days after Zixthara sent its urgent report, 12 alien ships appeared around the human space station. They came out of nowhere, materializing from empty space like ghosts becoming solid. Each ship was beautiful and strange, made of what looked like living crystal that pulsed with soft light. Alarms began ringing throughout the station. People ran to their emergency positions. Commander Rick Stone rushed to the command center, where Dr. Lisa Park was already studying the sensor. Readings. 12 ships, Lisa reported, her voice tight with worry. They're huge, Rick. Each one is 3 times bigger than our station, and their technology is unlike anything I've ever seen. Commander Stone looked at the displays showing the alien fleet surrounding them. The ships were arranged in a perfect sphere around the station, making escape impossible. But they were not firing weapons. They seemed to be waiting for something. Are they trying to communicate? Stone asked. Yes, but not with radio or any normal method. They're sending out some kind of energy pattern. It's almost like they're trying to talk directly to our minds. In Engineering Bay 7, Jake Martinez looked up from his work as the alarm sounded. His ADHD brain immediately focused on the new and exciting situation. He quickly saved his projects and headed for the command center, his mind already racing with possibilities about who these visitors might be. The alien, Zixthara, materialized on the command bridge of the space station. The humans could see it. Now, a shimmering figure made of light and energy that seemed to shift and flow like liquid crystal. Several crew members stepped backward in surprise and fear. Commander Stone stepped forward, his military training keeping him calm despite the shocking situation. I am Commander Stone of the Earth Space Station Meridian. Who are you and what do you want? Zixthara spoke without moving its mouth. Its voice seemed to come from inside everyone's head at the same time. I am Zixthara of the Velinari. We have come to establish communication with your species. But Jake, who had just arrived at the command center, felt something strange happening in his mind. The alien's voice was not just speaking to him, it was trying to get inside his thoughts. His ADHD brain immediately recognized this as something new and interesting to explore. Without meaning to, Jake's consciousness reached out toward the alien's mind. His natural curiosity, amplified by his ADHD, made him want to understand how this telepathic communication worked. He was not trying to be aggressive or defensive. He just wanted to learn something new. The moment Jake's mind touched Zixthara, consciousness, everything changed. The alien entity felt Jake's chaotic thought patterns crash into its carefully ordered, telepathic probe like a tidal wave hitting a sandcastle. Zixthara had been trying to read Commander Stone's thoughts to gain an advantage in the negotiations. Instead, it found itself drowning in Jake's scattered attention and rapidly shifting focus. Jake's ADHD brain treated the telepathic contact as the most fascinating thing that had ever happened to him. His mind latched on to the connection with the intensity that only someone with ADHD could produce. He was not trying to fight the alien. He was trying to understand it, learn from it, and explore this amazing new experience. The result was catastrophic for Zigthara. Jake's thoughts began pulling the alien's consciousness in 17 different directions at once. The human was simultaneously analyzing the alien's biotechnology, wondering about its home planet, calculating the energy requirements for faster than light travel, remembering a science fiction movie he had watched, and getting distracted by the pre-patterns of light the alien was making. Zigthara tried to disconnect from Jake's mind, but the human's ADHD-driven hyperfocus had locked onto the telepathic link. Jake was not trying to trap the alien. He was just so intensely interested in this new form of communication that his mind would not let go. The alien sent a distress signal to the Velinari fleet. The other 11 ships immediately tried to help their scout by adding their own telepathic power to the connection. This was a huge mistake. Jake's chaotic consciousness spread through the Velinari telepathic network like a computer virus. His scattered attention and creative thought patterns infected every alien mind that tried to help. Within minutes, the entire fleet was experiencing ADHD-style thinking for the first time in their species' history. The Velinari, who had always thought in neat, organized patterns, suddenly found themselves thinking about dozens of things at once. Their minds jumped from topic to topic without warning. They began having creative ideas that came from nowhere. They started noticing connections between completely unrelated concepts. On the bridge of the lead Velinari ship, Fleet Commander Morthic was experiencing something that terrified it. Its ancient, disciplined mind was suddenly full of chaotic, human thoughts. It was thinking about ship design and food recipes and childhood memories and mathematical equations all at the same time. The commander had never experienced anything like this in its 1,000-year lifetime. What is happening to us? Morthic asked its crew, but they were all having the same problem. The entire Velinari fleet was mentally infected by Jake's ADHD consciousness. Back on the human station, Jake was having the time of his life. The telepathic connection had opened up incredible new ways of thinking and learning. He was directly experiencing how the alien biotechnology worked. He could see the mathematical principles behind their faster-than-light travel. He was understanding concepts that human science would not discover for centuries. But more importantly, Jake's creative ADHD mind was improving everything it touched. As his consciousness spread through the Velinari network, he began suggesting modifications to their ship designs. He saw ways to make their engines more efficient. He found improvements to their life support systems. He discovered shortcuts in their navigation computers. "Hey," Jake said out loud, surprising everyone on the station's bridge. "These aliens have amazing technology, but they're thinking about it all wrong. Their ships could be twice as fast if they just changed a few things." Commander Stone stared at him. "Jake, what are you talking about? The aliens, they think too much in straight lines. Very organized, very careful, but they miss all the fun. Connections. Their ships are beautiful, but they're way too complicated. I could design something better using half the materials." Dr. Park was watching her instruments with amazement. "The alien fleet is backing away from us. Their energy signatures are all over the place. It looks like they're having some kind of system failure." What she was seeing was the Velinari fleet in complete chaos. Jake's stream of creative improvements was flooding their telepathic network faster than they could process. Their ships were receiving so many new ideas and modifications that their biocomputers were overloading. Fleet Commander Morthic tried to cut the telepathic connection, but Jake's hyperfocused ADD mind would not let go. The human was not being malicious. He was just so fascinated by the alien technology that he wanted to keep exploring and improving it. The Velinari had encountered thousands of alien species, but they had never met minds that worked like Jake's. Their entire approach to first contact was based on reading thoughts and predicting behavior. But Jake's ADHD consciousness was completely unpredictable and impossible to control. Worse, Jake's creative chaos was actually improving their technology, while making it impossible for them to think clearly. The human was accidentally solving engineering problems that had puzzled the Velinari for generations. But he was doing it in such a scattered, random way that they could not follow his reasoning. On the human station, Jake suddenly blinked and looked around in confusion. Oh, weird, they cut the connection. I was just getting to the really interesting stuff about quantum consciousness interfaces. The telepathic link had been severed, but the damage to the Velinari fleet was already done. Their once orderly minds were still buzzing with Jake's chaotic thought patterns. Their ship's computers were trying to process hundreds of creative modifications all at once. Commander Morthek made a decision that shocked its entire crew. All ships retreat to safe distance immediately. Prepare for emergency jump to hyperspace. Commander, asked one of the junior officers, should we not attempt to establish control over this species? Negative, Morthek replied, its mental voice shaking with something that might have been fear. These humans possess a form of consciousness that is dangerous to our species. The individual designated Jake Martinez has infected our entire fleet with chaotic thought patterns that we cannot process or control. Within minutes, the Velinari fleet disappeared as suddenly as it had arrived, leaving only empty space around the human station. On the station's bridge, Commander Stone looked around at his crew in amazement. What just happened? I think, said Dr. Park slowly, Jake's ADHD just won humanity's first contact with aliens by being too chaotic for them to understand. Jake grinned and bounced slightly on his feet. Cool. That was the most interesting thing that's ever happened. To me, did you know their ships use living crystal matrices for computing? And their faster-than-light drives work by folding space instead of moving through it? I have so many ideas for how we could improve our own technology. Commander Stone shook his head in disbelief. Jake, do you realize what you just did? You single-handedly defeated an alien fleet with you.